This series of author interviews is brought to you by Leschenault Press and the Book Reality Experience, turning writers' dreams into book realities.
In this episode, we're joined by author Mark Anthony, who's in the process of writing a trilogy of supernatural thrillers, the first of which was released under the title of Lit, and the second one, Lit Ascent, is coming later this year. But before we get into the books, Mark, thanks for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I was born in the UK 21 years ago. Moved to Australia, into Melbourne, when I was a very, very young boy, and eventually made my way to Perth, Western Australia, where I've been for over 20 years now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I've predominantly worked in healthcare. I was and still am a nurse. Worked in a variety of different roles within healthcare, and I live with my partner in the city. Yeah,
fantastic.
Normally,
so you moved over to Perth about 20 years ago, you say?
Yeah, it was a long time. I came over here originally to study and never went back. Yeah.
Good work. And have you been writing that whole time, or is this a new venture for you, or how did you get into writing?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been writing. I think more so the storyteller as a kid as well. And I think inspired by, I had attempted to write things in the past, but a lot of them were when you've got work and you've got things that get on top of you, and I never actually completed anything. However, yes, I've always loved writing.
Oh, good work. So in this book, Lit, obviously it's a memoir about nurses, I'm guessing?
Absolutely not. No.
So how did you get inspired to write supernatural thrillers?
Funny enough, I actually originally, years ago, when I was a child, and I mean in my mid-20s, I used to pen quite almost like gentle G-rated fantasy type stories. I don't know why. I think years ago I had 3 children. So it seemed, I don't know, appropriate, and I could tell them stories, and I could write stories for them. But I always did like I always liked the intensity of horror or thrillers, and I had played with this idea that I'd been having since I had a nightmare about the concept of lit.
Okay.
And playing with that idea in my head over the course of about 12 years, I think. I think I wrote the first half of the first chapter about 3 times in those 12 years, but never finished it. Actually, I did find, about 6 months ago, I did find the first original chapter I wrote back in 2013.
And has it much?
Very different. Oh yeah, very different. Roughly the same idea, but quite different. Yes. So when everything happened with COVID and so forth, that's when I started writing.
Okay. So for those that haven't read the first installment of Lit, in a nutshell, what's the book about?
The book is about it's based in any city, any urban area that rains a lot, atmospheric in modern day. And it's about people who have these the infliction of a supernatural entity that is attached to them, that when they get angry with somebody, it uses them as a means to take that target to hell, effectively, where they remain immortal and tormented for the rest of existence. It's lovely. It's lovely. There is, as I said to one of my, I've responded before, that death in my stories is actually a nice thing. Death is a way out. Yeah, that's right. If you're lucky, you get to die. So, and that's the concept of it. So it's about these people and who live this way, and how they deal with it in various ways, and also growing the universe from there. So, and that's where I am at the moment with the second book, is introducing a more bigger world for these misfits to actually to belong in.
Okay, so with the 3 books and the fact that you've established your own world rules and there's things that characters can do and can't do you do a lot of plotting? Is your office covered with plot maps, or do you make it up on the spur of the moment?
Probably the first one a lot more. I think the first one is your first big project is when you're planning the most, because it's also new to you. Your writing style is new to you. The atmosphere you're creating, you try to keep consistent. The characters are new to you. Even though I had a rough idea, and I still, you have an idea of where it is going to go, and you have the main events in your mind of where you want it to get to at different stages. I think that can change. That can change and morph as the story goes on, especially when you get to know, when you get more familiar with who you're writing about, with character, and the way storylines are going, and the natural flow of what you're doing. Because remember, you'll create lore. And that's the issue with fantasy, with anything that has a fantastical edge to it. If you're creating a lore, then you have to be consistent. And if you're not consistent, there has to be a reason why. It's actually a big deal if you break those rules that you've made up in this own personal universe.
Actually, that's very true, because if you've made up your own rules and then you break them from chapter 3 to chapter 7, people are going to start commenting.
Oh, they notice.
It's the other thing about character. You've established characters that are fantastical and have got supernatural powers, but you've also got to stay within their traits, their character capabilities. Who have you been surprised by as a character that has taken on more of your book than you maybe expected them to, or who's your favorite character?
There is a character in the book that's probably that progressed and was actually the hardest I thought would be the hardest to write, and that was the 8-year-old boy Joshua. I wasn't sure about introducing him in the beginning, because I had concerns of how do you incorporate an 8-year-old boy into this nightmare, because they're not actually they're not powers. It's very much a curse. There is no win for them. Once a year, every year, your own monster comes for you. So it's and that's how they meet. So the book Lit is actually based around these group preparing for that one night of the year when they are actually themselves become lit, which means that they are then visible to these creatures that are around them and can be harmed. So trying to fit this little boy into that, it was actually a lot easier than I thought in the end, because little, 8-year-old kids are quite wholesome, and we've all been 8, and we can sort of relate to how they think, and sliding him in, and he became a very, very popular character. The little boy, it was all like the little boy, oh, the poor little boy. And it was very, very sad. But I do enjoy writing him, because it's like he's a little, I found that fun, even in the worst times.
And when you say that you enjoy writing him, are you writing in a set schedule? Are you religiously up at 8 o'clock and writing to midday, or is
no. My schedule changes. I think you ought to be very flexible. I do write. I think it's important that you start writing regardless. So I'll get up in the morning and I'll start. Whether the natural flow hits you on that day. I've had days where I can sit there for 8-10 hours and just go and go and go, and it comes from I don't even know where that comes from. It's a good day. It's a good day. I've also had days where I've got up and I've changed a sentence around, deleted a word, and then sat there and stared at the screen for 3 or 4 hours.
Yep.
So it's all about, and it's quite because it can be. Yeah, I don't know what makes. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but for me, it's not. It's either on or, and if it's off, you keep going anyway, and that's it. Because funny enough, it does still come to you, even in the moments that you feel it's not. And you can edit that after. You can go back to those bits where you're not sure if you are completely in the zone, but you can definitely feel whether you're in the zone to write or not. I just don't put it down for any extended period of time because I'm always worried that you wouldn't pick it up again.
Well, there's a great phrase that you can't edit a blank page. So even if you only put a paragraph down, at least it's something to play with.
Yeah.
So do you have a quirk? Do you have a certain place that you write, or a certain cap that you wear? Is any of these?
Very cold here at the moment. It's very cold.
Yes.
And I've got very little hair. No, I usually write. I have a writing room in my house. I'm quite lucky, and I've also building a retreat in the country to write in because I live in quite a big house, but in the middle of a city,
Right.
so not particularly quiet. I'm quite weird like that. I can either become totally distracted by what's going on around me, which I think in part is a bit of me making an excuse for not getting anything done, or sitting in a cafe. I occasionally will sit in a cafe down the road with my laptop and drink copious amounts of coffee and write.
So is that your go-to drink? Copious amounts of coffee? You're not a Hemingway?
No, it's iced lattes usually. Iced lattes. I know how particularly exactly how I have them, and that's how I start my day off. So I don't even start writing until I have my iced latte. It's terrible. It's terrible.
So you've brought the book out. The first book has been out, but we're Book Reality are actually bringing it out as a second edition prior to your second one coming out. Why did you choose to publish independently? Why are you not pursuing the big traditional publishers?
I think that there was a couple of reasons. Initially, I didn't know whether I intended on even putting it out in any forum. I wanted to finish it. It was quite, for lack of a better word, a selfish endeavor. When I actually did that, I started looking at what were my options? It was traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, or self-publishing. There was so much to learn, and it's such an overwhelming task. The one thing I was sure of is I didn't want to lose control, whether that be creatively. I wanted to have control of what I'd done. I didn't know how any of those mechanisms really worked anyway. And I wanted to keep my own copyright. I wanted to be more involved in the process. And it's quite soul destroying. And I think, was there an element of impatience about it? Possibly. I mean, you got to remember also that, you look at traditional publishing, and your manuscript can end up going into a slush pile that's thousands deep. You have to be what a particular publisher wants you to be at that time. And I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to do what I did, and do what I do the best me, bring it out, and also market it largely myself, which was a lot of fun, but so much to learn. But then in going that, I get to keep control, and I get to keep my work, which is important to me.
So for anybody starting down that path, what would your sort of 2 or 3 essential pieces of advice be for them?
For self-publishing?
Well, for doing the pathway that you chose, for looking after yourself, for making sure that you were responsible for as much as you could be.
There is a lot of learning to be involved in doing it. It was a completely different ballpark to anything I've done in the past, and there's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. When you've come from working in an arena where you know the ins and outs intricately to a completely different industry. So forgive yourself if you do feel slightly overwhelmed. And keep in mind all the time that what actually makes you a writer is that you write.
Mhm.
It's that's it. You'll find your audience, and you will find, you will find your place, and your voice is unique. Remembering, of course, that it's not always about, it's about producing the best product that you can produce. Editing, really important. You need an awesome editor. You need a great proofread, because if you don't edit and proofread, and this is before you even consider sending it out to anybody else, then the reviews will indicate that you didn't edit or proofread, and it's not, and they're not kind about it. So make sure, be kind to yourself, and just keep writing, and avoid the unfortunately, when there's a people with passion, there's people with a scam, and the industry at the moment, and we all know it, is quite rife with companies who are waiting to take advantage of people who think that they're the next best thing. So I would think that a good piece of advice is a literary agent and a publisher will never cold call you. Never. They don't have to. So keep an eye out for that. If the company is asking, if a company asks for money via email or via phone call or for a service, first of all, stop and think, what part of this can I actually do myself is really, really important. It's all about quality.
It's one of the reasons that we established Book Reality, was because of the amount of predators that are out there.
Oh yeah.
People who have written a book are fairly self-conscious about it, but to be approached by a company in a cold call fashion is the biggest red flag that you can have. There are very reputable companies out there. We like to think that we're one of them, but you have to do your research. You can't be going down this blind alley. Yeah, I agree.
And remembering that especially I think once your book is out there, your details are out there, and anybody can get them, and they can find them. They will find you. And I put up with that a lot with the first book. And now it's been mentioned that I'm producing, that the second one is going to be released. That started to happen again. So, but now it's it's all, and they'll actually make you believe that you were the one that put the query and that you were the one that was looking for them, that they'll market you, and the truth being that, even traditional publishers don't, unless you're one of the big guns, they don't have a very big marketing budget.
You're not, no.
But, unless you're J.K. Rowling or someone like that, they're not going to pour millions of dollars into promoting you.
Yeah.
So
so with regards to you've had a book published, what was the best moment, happiest feeling, best thing that came with that book? Did you open the box and take the book out and there was a hallelujah chorus?
No, I tried to pretend there was, though. I remember it arrived and I opened it and I pulled the book out and it was a hardcover, and I sort of went, yay. But I was actually terrified of it. Because that's all your hard work. That's that's months of your life, and it's a very personal thing to do. So I was like, oh, look, everybody here, but and I didn't actually open it for weeks, if not months. I left it sitting on the shelf, and I wouldn't open it. It wasn't until the reviews started coming in, the good reviews started coming in, that I actually felt genuinely happy with what I had done. I'd done my best, and it really does qualify that when other people are really enjoying it. So that makes a big difference. That's when I started to feel proud of what I'd done. I was always proud of the work I'd put in, but you don't know. you don't know how it's going to be received. You're not in control of that. Yeah.
So was that the best moment, the first very positive review that you got from a reader?
Yeah, when the reviews were positive. When the reviews were positive, that was when I started to feel happy about what I had done. Because you can get people to tell you, even I had an editor who told me that for the first one, it's really well done. Oh, this is really good. You don't actually believe them, because we like to give ourselves a hard time, you know, and we do. And also, you're not very good at marketing yourself as a person, because, you sort of see that, especially people like myself, I'm a nurse, man. We don't market ourselves. We don't sell ourselves, So you want the product to sort of eclipse you and take on a life of its own. And I was very happy when it did. And now I'm really happy. I think the first book now has an average of 4.8 out of 5 stars.
Excellent.
Across all review forums. So I'm really proud of that.
Now, on the flip side, they're also, because everything in balance and we can't please all of the people all of the time, I'm assuming that somewhere a reader has picked up your book and not liked it. How have you dealt with that?
No,
not at all.
Never happened. No. I think it's also, I look, it depends where it is. It depends, they can be quite cutthroat. And however entitled to their opinion, I think it's important not to dwell in that, because you can't win. It's not something you can, you can't respond to it. You should not respond to it.
No, you should not.
Yeah, does it hit you in the feels? Yeah. If it's qualified. And some things you can look at it with a sense of curiosity and go, okay, well, that's a good point. But if someone, also, because it's an open forum, it's that wonderful thing called the internet. You're basically inviting anyone. So yeah, I take it on the chin. You take the good with the bad, and roll with it. Just roll with it.
Yeah, I've got to say that there's some people out there that pick a book up which is obviously not their genre. It's something that they wouldn't normally read. They don't like it. Why they've gone down the pathway to buy it, and then go, well, this isn't what I usually read, and I don't like it. Well, thanks.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, it's like I had I think about a few months after the initial release, I had a review from a particular book reviewer in the States, who typically reviews and has wrote romance novels. There is absolutely nothing romantic about what we do at all. So as much as, she wasn't scathing, but it wasn't good. But then again, that's like me picking up a Mills and Boon and having a read and giving a review. It's about finding your ground, finding your people. Some people will like your voice, they will appreciate where you're coming from, and they'll associate with it. Other people, no, and then that's okay. That's okay. It's just how it is.
It's interesting you say the one thing that all authors shouldn't be doing is responding to those negative reviews. You just you take it on the chin and you move on. But as you say, with a 4.8 average review, Lit has been very, very well received by the audience out there. And they're no doubt looking forward to the second. So when do you think the second will be coming out? And then again, when do you think the third will bring the trilogy to a close?
Well, I'm pushing now for October. I actually do write quite quickly. The first book I finished in 5 months. So I'm hoping to I'll go over. This one's going to be a little bigger. So I'm hoping by October.
Very good.
The third installment, I will give myself time in between the second and the third, because it's a big job. But I do hope by this time next year.
But you already know the ending. You know.
I do.
Page. Yeah.
I do. But the work is in the details, and that's absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. So after the third one is out, looking far ahead, what's next for author Mark Anthony?
I do have other projects that I'm very much interested in. There's always ideas. There's always new places to go. I would like to explore something a little bit different than the lit world, because even though one book has been public, I sit in that space when I write the entire time. So I am, even though it would be, I think, finish the trilogy, and have a think about other things that I would want to do. Definitely.
When you were talking there about you've been in the lit world for quite a while, and you're going to be in it for another year. You obviously, you don't have all of this information in your head. You must be researching certain things about the world that you're putting together. What's the most interesting thing you've discovered in your research?
Funny enough, I think some of the hardest things to come up with for myself were creating things that didn't, and I had this fear of being contrived, of sounding contrived. Trying to come up with ideas and things that are unique. And so a lot of it revolved around looking at different psychological concepts, like, for example, the uncanny valley, and that surrealism and the eeriness and atmospheric, rather than rely purely on body horror of gore and heads rolling, of which there is gore. It's appropriately placed gore, but a lot of the most unsettling things is actually is sitting in that space. So about creating atmosphere and so forth. I've learned a lot about writing technically, definitely, and I'm still learning about that now. I've learned a lot about different folklores. Okay. Making sure that I didn't follow particular tropes were really important. Staying away from tropes that people are getting tired of is really important.
So we're not seeing your characters running into a church and barricading themselves with holy water. And
exactly, and I thought that was why I completely avoided the concept of demons and heaven and hell, and because it was, for lack of a better word, it was too easy. It was like, well, what's the solution for that? Is, you get some holy water and you put a crucifix on and off you go. I didn't want it to be that simple or that contrived. As they're obviously, but funny enough, people will still, even the reviews, refer to them as the demons. But I've never called them that. Never.
It's an easy word to grasp if you haven't come up with an original.
It is.
Now, speaking of originals, thank you ever so much for your time today. I will excuse myself because in this interview I am still getting over my COVID, so I hope my coughing hasn't destroyed too much. But as we bring this to a close, we like to ask 15 quickfire questions. Now, anybody that watched the Actors Studio or Stephen Colbert, there are some questionnaires already out there. We've taken some of those, we've molded them together, and we've added our own little flavor. So are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Sure. Yes, I am. Yes.
Right. Author Mark Anthony, what is your favorite book?
Would probably be, embarrassing enough, The Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling.
Excellent.
Loved it.
What is your least favorite book?
It was called Bear Cave or something, but I don't remember it because I never read it since.
Was it a fantasy or was it about animals? Or?
Yeah, no, it was bizarre. And I remember just trying to read it because it's one of those books that everybody tells you is great. So you sit down to read it and there's a few chapters and you're like, oh, this is rubbish. Yeah.
Excellent. Creativity, or in any aspect really, what turns you on?
Oh, what turns me on? Michael Fassbender. No. Did I say no? What turns me on? Probably ice lattes.
Excellent. And what turns you off?
Absence of ice lattes.
Absence of that. Very good. Summer or winter?
Winter for writing and summer for mood.
Excellent. On a completely free day that you can do anything you want, who do you spend it with?
Usually myself, actually, because I don't get a lot of time by myself. So yeah, those days are kind of special.
Excellent. Mountains or oceans?
Mountains, because it's Australia and everything in the oceans will kill you.
Favorite movie?
Kill Bill.
And if you are only allowed to listen to one song or one track of music for the rest of your life, what's it going to be?
Probably Minuet by Bach.
Okay. Who makes you laugh the most?
My children.
What smell do you love?
Coffee.
What smell do you hate?
Coriander.
Okay. Other than the professions that you've done, and that includes nursing and writing, what would you like to do?
Oh, screenwriter, screenplays.
Okay, other than writing,
Oh,
I'll force you. Other than being a writer.
Let's talk my way through it. Probably a pilot or something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's definitely different.
Yeah.
And what profession would you definitely not like to do?
Podiatrist. Sorry to any podiatrist that's watching this. I don't get it, but yeah, podiatrist.
You say that like you've been around podiatrists enough to know that you definitely don't want to do that.
I choose not to be.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Yeah, turn around, you're going back.
Very good. Hey, Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much for taking part in Book Realities. I look forward to the second edition of Lit coming out.
Thank you so much. Take care.
No worries. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Hi, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more readings and author interviews. And don't forget to hit that button to be notified every time we post new content.